Okay, you all see me, I hope. Welcome to our first meeting of 2021. And you haven't got your newsletter yet, I presume, Capital Apple. But you will notice when you do get it, there's a comment in there from me about our AGM that's coming up next month. And one of the issues that we're going to have addressed, we're going to want to address at the AGM is about our future membership. And now that we're holding meetings over Zoom, the possibility is there that we could actually expand our membership beyond just those who live in the Wellington region. And we do have a couple of members from outside of Wellington who've been able to join our meetings, but they haven't been able to do that before. So that's sort of what the issue of possibly expanding our membership beyond just Wellington. If we're going to do that, there are quite a few issues that we need to discuss. So that'll be brought up at the AGM. So just a reminder to everybody, the next meeting at the end of next month will be, do you know the date by any chance, David?
The
22nd of February will be our AGM.
Yep.
And it would be nice to have a couple of new faces on the committee if possible. And I get the feeling, if I'm right, that all those who are on the committee at the moment are happy to stand again. But we can still do it a couple of extra ones. So that's enough for me, I think. So I'll now pass back over to David and he will carry on tonight's meeting. So thank you.
Right, that wasn't quite what I expected. We're on a recording there, that's all right. Okay. Yeah. I'm seeing Margaret's face big front and centre on this screen, which is a bit confusing. So what I might do is switch this one to gallery view, which will look better. It's telling me new drag and drop to reorder videos. Okay. What was that, Margaret? I couldn't hear you.
The date of the AGM, I thought it would be later. So was it 22nd or
22nd, because 28th is a Sunday. So the last day in February is the Sunday. So it's 6 days before that. So it's annoyingly early. So we have to start getting ready for the AGM quite soon. Right. Nobody else waiting? No? Okay, we're having a relatively small meeting tonight. So as Graham mentioned, the magazine's not quite ready yet. I finally got to the point about half an hour before I left the meeting that I finished writing my article. And we now have a magazine minus a front cover. So that will be tonight's job after I get home, is to finish off the front of that and distribute it. So apologies for that. I had, as I've mentioned, actually did I mention in the email, this illness and people being away and things. I had a cold, which I caught while away at the beach holiday, which has lasted for 2 weeks, which finally got to the point on Saturday that I no longer felt like I had a cold. I just got a lingering cough now, so it's and clearing throat. So I can at least talk for more than a minute without coughing, which was where I was last week. So I have been somewhat indisposed and unable to get much done. So I've been trying to do work and things while I've been catching up on stuff. So apologies for that, just trying to catch up on everything still. Right, okay, so if we can talk about Q&A, I was intending to bring along my printed copy, but I didn't actually, I left it on the printer at home. That was very clever, wasn't it? So Dennis had a question, but he's not actually here tonight, either in person or in online. He had a question for me, which I thought was worth raising, which was anybody else using WhatsApp as a means of communicating with anybody, whether it's friends, family, whatever it might be, because there's been an item in the news recently, and if you use WhatsApp and you actually run the app, it will have alerted you to this, that Facebook owns WhatsApp and they're changing their terms and conditions so that if you want to keep using WhatsApp, you have to agree to sharing consists of your contact list, your status, your contacts status, and a few other related bits and pieces. Some people are not happy about this. WhatsApp has delayed it for about 3 months, I believe. I haven't seen that detail. It was
it's only if you use it with a commercial.
WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't what I remember from the article I was reading earlier.
It did say you had to agree by the 8th of February if you wanted to keep using it. Is that being changed?
Your audio is awful, Margaret. I can barely hear you.
Oh,
Your mic is possibly not picking up very well.
sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
It said 8th of February was the deadline. Has that been changed?
Well, that was what some of the articles I was reading last week was saying. Yeah, so the original article I read said WhatsApp gives users an ultimatum. If I share the screen from here, share screen. That one. Okay, so that's what the article I was reading about it originally. So this is on the 7th of January. So this was the original description, said that that's what the message actually said. How businesses can use Facebook hosted messages to store and manage their WhatsApp chats. That's sort of a separate feature. I'm just trying to remember what the details were. I didn't remember it seeing anything about it being specific to corporate users. Yeah, well, the payment stuff is a separate issue, but this was specifically
The users who communicate with the business via WhatsApp, we also have their data used at target.
right. That's if you that the business can also get it. Okay, that makes more sense to me. Yeah.
So it is everything.
Yeah. Weird. It's on a funny angle. I just realised.
Yeah, it says here users have until the 16th of May to accept.
Yeah, it's changed. It was originally
Date was
February, now it's May. Okay, but the guts of it was that, as that list in the top says, users' phone numbers, other people's phone numbers stored in address books, profile names, profile pictures, status messages, including when a user was last online, diagnostic data. So basically, Facebook wants to gather information, as much information about everybody they possibly can to target them with advertising. So they're basically saying all the stuff is going to be linked into your profile that Facebook maintains. You have to give them that authority, but Facebook, it was previously optional. You could opt out. Now it's required if you want to keep using WhatsApp from beginning in May.
Is there a good alternative?
Yeah, so Dennis's question was basically on the lines of, okay, he's got this notice from WhatsApp and he's had other people who use it, and that some of them recommended Signal as the possible alternative, and or Telegram, I think it is. Yeah. So he didn't mention Telegram, he just asking about Signal. So I was doing a quick bit of research. My boss uses Signal. I had been intending to sign up for it, so I just signed up for it today, but I haven't done anything more with it yet. The interesting detail there is that Signal and WhatsApp actually use the same protocol. So technically they're identical in terms of encryption features and so forth for the communication. The difference is who owns them. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. Signal is a non-profit organization owned by nobody, basically, and they don't want to know anything about their users. So apart from sharing phone numbers so that you can find contacts, that's about all they do, basically, as far as I can see. So Dennis's question was, is Signal more secure than WhatsApp? And that's not actually the correct question. It's not more secure, it's more private, I think is the correct question.
It's like Facebook.
It's encrypted money.
It's encrypted, but the issue is that basically Facebook wants all the information that's available in the WhatsApp app, not the communications themselves, but who you are communicating with is potentially information that they want to know so that they can link people together, that sort of thing. So I thought it would just highlight working that way. Okay, now Andrew has put a message on here saying Telegram is not recommended, it's badly organized cryptographically. And I hadn't looked into that at all yet. I just heard of it mentioned as a possible alternative. So thank you for that comment, Andrew. Yeah, so Signal is end-to-end encrypted, seems reasonably good. About the only requirement I know was you had to have a smartphone because you have to sign up using a phone number. That's your means of identification. I believe WhatsApp worked the same way. Has anybody used it recently enough? Because I use it.
WhatsApp is phone.
Yeah, it is.
Phone
Okay.
messaging.
I remember that it was many years ago, but I haven't used it for about 10 years, so or longer.
Well, we started using it with my work when COVID hit, because it was our form of communicating and getting in contact with all the staff members. Because with that, our boss could actually send private messages to people who just wanted messages too, or you could do it as a group. So that's why we started using it. But I've used it beforehand.
Did everybody else hear what Shane just said then?
Not
Yep.
completely.
Good, just checking. Yeah, I think my microphones in this computer are better, so hopefully it's good enough without having to use the external mic. Excuse me.
We use it for phone calls and WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
To anyone.
WhatsApp, that is. Yeah. Signal can do that. You can also do video calls. So basically it's the usual problem that if somebody you want to communicate is using a particular service, you've got to use the same service. It's the usual split up of things. So if they're on Facebook Messenger, you've got to use that. If they're using text messaging, it's reasonably universal. If they're on iMessage, you can usually fall back to text messaging without problems, so that's all right. If they're on Signal or Telegram or WhatsApp or Viber or any of those ones, you have to be on the same service generally for that to work properly. Okay, and FaceTime is also one that's annoyingly limited because it's Apple products only. Margaret, you have a hand up.
Yes, you said something about the sharing with Facebook. I don't belong to Facebook, but I do have WhatsApp. I understood that all my contacts in WhatsApp would be recorded as being my contacts in Facebook, even if I wasn't a member of Facebook, and that Facebook would have access to the information in any chats, which you can also have on your PC, but the PC doesn't do phone calls.
Yeah, as far as I know, they're not saying they share the content of chats at all. It's just the contact information. So, but Facebook owns Instagram and WhatsApp are their sort of two major things. So if you use Instagram or you use WhatsApp, and Facebook is allowed to share the information about your contact tree, basically, then they can use that to establish links so that they know who you know, and then build a profile of you based on that, and anything else they can learn about you. So, but Facebook has got information on people who have no contact with Facebook whatsoever, because they tag people, and somebody else who is a member of Facebook has a photo which includes you, and they may tag you with your name, and Facebook says, oh good, we'll learn about this person even though they haven't got a Facebook account. So that's I'm probably on Facebook in that sense. I've never had a Facebook account though, so, and I've can't hear you, Margaret. You need to move forwards.
Sorry, I'm sure I am too. I was just trying to close windows because there's a little bit of motor noise that's obscuring my microphone. Sorry, David.
Yep, that's okay. Yep, so that was the gist of Genesis question, and my answer was basically Signal seems fine. I've just got as far as setting it up and linking my computer to it. So if once you signed up from a phone, you can add other devices to it as well, and it has a mechanism where you display a QR code in the app and you scan it using your phone camera using the Signal app, and that links the two together, so that it knows that they're on the same account from that point onwards. So since the phone number is the primary means of identification, you have to start with the phone app, and then you can add other devices as needed. I don't know if you can add other phones, but you to the same account, because they've got different phone numbers. It may not let you do that, but you can add iPads and Macs at least, and probably other like Windows PCs, that sort of thing. So there's plenty of options there.
David,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you have groups with Signal the way you can with WhatsApp? Because I
Yes,
have quite a lot of groups, with WhatsApp. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a look at that briefly earlier. I haven't set anything up yet, but if I run the Signal app on my phone, just to see what it says there, and go back to the front of it, it says get started, new group, or invite friends.
Oh, okay.
So obviously it's the capability of set groups of people. And
Yeah, okay.
without me doing anything, it's gone through my contact list on the phone and identified everybody who's in my contact list whose phone number I know who already has a Signal account. So I've got a big list of people who already are known to have Signal accounts under those phone numbers. So that made it easy. Oh, here's Dennis, ironically, right now. Just make sure he's got audio. Right, Dennis, can you hear me? Yeah, your microphone is muted. We've just been talking about your question before you got here. So you'll need to unmute your microphone if we can hear you.
Is that it?
Yep.
Right.
So we're just saying that I've already been explaining your query and just finding out what other people are doing here in terms of WhatsApp and what the knowledge was about Signal. There's WelMac. I'll just let him in. So I've effectively summarised the email I sent you. So unless you've got any follow-up questions or anything else to add to the discussion, we can probably just move on from that.
No, I'm quite clear on that. We'll just have to proceed as best we can and see what happens.
Okay.
I'll be in touch with my son first. I haven't done that.
Yep. Okay. All right. So moving along. Hello, Ray. Welcome. That gives us a reasonable number. We've now got a total of 16 people, so it's more reasonable. 8 online and 8 locally, including me. So, any other questions before we ask Peter?
Working with pages, she's been preparing a document and adding, cutting and pasting, and ended up with spare pages at the end that she deletes the stuff she doesn't want. Is there any way, they show on the thumbnail list down the side, is there any way of actually deleting those empty pages? Nothing will kind of do works.
I have an example. I'll just find it because I've just been doing my article and I have a draft document that I work on. There it is. I duplicate it so I don't accidentally modify it.
You can find the cursor insertion point on the empty pages, but deleting it doesn't seem to make pages.
Okay.
Just drag. Drag?
Yeah.
The cursor all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah. Now it depends on what exactly it is, but if I go into Zoom here and go share screen again, and then choose my pages document. Is he on pages? That one. Share. Okay, so here is my article, which the document I used to write my article basically. So it's like a cutout from Capital Apple, which I write in here first and then I copy and paste into the real one. So you can see in the left column, I basically allow myself 6 pages. So I've just set all those up in advance so that the worst case I've had so far was a 6-page article. So I've got enough space there to write 6 pages with all of them having linked together flowing text boxes and everything like that. So if I wanted to print that and then, what's the context? You're trying to share the document or print it or?
Oh, it's for ultimate printing, yeah.
Yeah, because what you can do, of course, in printing is tell to only print a certain range of pages, and that includes print to PDF.
Yeah,
but if you're going to,
we actually put on a PDF and give it to somebody else.
Right, but if you want to just delete the pages, I think you can just click on these and press the delete key, and it deletes it. Every time I delete key, that page goes away, and that leaves me just 2 pages of my article. So thumbnail itself. Now that's assuming you're in page view. There is a subtle distinction between, if you've got a blank document, I'm wondering, does that actually have page numbers? If I go, you won't, everybody else won't be able to see this right now. I'll just get this set up and I'll share it once I've done. Hello us. Right, that gives us several pages worth of stuff. Now, if I come back here and delete that page, that's slightly different. That's actually body text in this case. So if I go, yeah, that's not quite what you want. I'll just share that one so you can see what I'm talking about. If I go back to Zoom here and go share screen and find that pages document. Right, so I've just created a dummy document which has the quick brown fox blank line repeated over spanning 4 pages. So if I try to come in here and delete page 3, which has something on it, I get a warning, are you sure you want to delete all content from your document? So the distinction there appears to be if you're using body text, which is the background area of the document, it behaves differently than if you're using text boxes, which are laid out on the page, and if they got anything in them. So if I delete enough content, for example, that this page is blank, does that make a difference? If I come in here and go delete, it doesn't change anything. It still wants to delete everything from my document. So what you can do though is if you go to the end and press the delete key enough times, the page goes away because there's no longer any body text on that page. So the distinction there, I think, is it's basically that Pages has an implied background text object that you just. Well, the linked text boxes are a layer on top of this. So the background text is always there, but the linked text boxes, it used to be a lot clearer in the old version of Pages 09, because they had 2 distinct document types. They had word processing and page layout. They were different modes, and you couldn't have body text in the page layout document. You had to use text boxes. Whereas in the modern version, I can come in here and insert a text box somewhere. No objects, text there. Yeah, there we go. I can just have a text box which sits wherever I want to put it. So I can actually have background body text as well as text boxes. So that's effectively 2 different modes of operation. So if there is any content in the background text object that spans the page, you can't delete the page. You have to delete the text from the page instead. But if it's only got empty objects on the page, you can happily delete the objects, delete the whole page. So if there's an empty text box there. So it's really a question of how you're doing the layout, and whether it's a free-flowing body text, like a form letter or something like that, as opposed to a newsletter style thing where you've got boxes. Yeah, because if you're doing a newsletter, normally you'd want to arrange text boxes to lay out the pages the way you want them. Yeah, well, you can also do a mixture. You can have background body text with images inserted in places, but then you've got to be careful because your body text is actually occupying the entire document. So yeah, that's not ideal. So that sort of answered it. It's dependent on whether you're using body text or text boxes, it appears. And the only way to get rid of it is to effectively go to the last page and delete all the content. And then as soon as you delete the last thing on that page, the page disappears. If I come to the middle page and go delete everything on that page, I end up with it's actually deleting content, so it's shifted everything up accordingly. So that's what I expected. Yeah, if I undo that again, it'll put that back. If I copy that and then paste it twice, we can have the whole page full of it. So yeah, the whole thing is effectively one document because it's a body text free-flowing thing which crosses page boundaries. So you've got to be a bit careful. Whereas if you're doing it with text boxes, you end up with, which one's that? It's the copy, yeah. You end up with having to decide what your layout's going to look like. You can, if necessary, create a text box that simply fills the whole page and just link them together to form linked text boxes. And then if there's nothing left on that page, you can delete it quite happily. But if I come in here and delete that page, it's still flowing, it knows to flow the text onto the next page. So I can actually delete any page I like in this document, and it's deleted the picture because that was a separate object on that page, but it didn't delete the text. If I delete that page, that now moves down to what was previously page 3. So it's just free flowing text onto new pages. So that's I think that makes more sense in terms of managing. If you're trying to manage precisely how many pages you've got, then using text boxes linked together makes more sense than free-form background text and body text. That's just a detail. Yeah, undo. I don't remember how to do that. If I go to here and choose, other people can't see me, sorry, I've just realized I'm on the wrong document again. If I go back to that one again. Yeah, you have page layout. I don't remember how you do the multiple pages side by side. I'm sure there is a way of doing it, but I haven't done that for so long, I've forgotten where they've hidden it. Yeah, but there's a, I think it's under page setup or something. Where's that hiding? Document. Oh, it's under print. That's what you want to print. No, don't. That's not what I wanted at all. Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't remember how you do that. But there's anyway. If you've got 2 pages side by side, that's just a detail of how the pages are laid out. It isn't actually an issue.
Page 2 is actually the cover.
Right.
Where it's
Yeah.
folded over, it becomes the-
Yeah. Okay. I think I can't answer any more on that one.
Yeah, I'll try that.
Yeah, have a play with that anyway and see if that solves the problem. Okay.
Somebody will-
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we may be at supper break point shortly, and give my voice a brief break point. Any other questions from people online?
If you don't
Sure.
mind. Yeah, I've got an old iMac Air, 2013 model, I think, showing its age now.
iMac Air or MacBook Air?
MacBook Air.
Oh.
MacBook Air, sorry, yeah. It's showing its age. So I was sort of looking at replacing it. And one of the things I was looking at is actually the iPad Air, because it has various advantages. It does all the programs that I want. But the question is more related to what I can plug into, because I'm a tutor, so I'm going out to various venues, plugging my my MacBook Air into.
One of these basically is what you've currently got. It's one of these low profiles tapered things. Yep, that's a 2015, but yep, same principle. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm basically plugging into usually about 4 things: data projector, speakers, usually into my iPhone because I just hooking up to the internet, and occasionally other wee bits and pieces. So I was just wondering about how easy is it to plug in multiple devices into an iPad Air, for example, where you've only got one, I presume, USB-C connector. Can you buy adapters where you can plug in USB, lots of USB possibilities?
Yep, bear with me for a sec, I'll find it. In my bag, I have somewhere. It should have. It has an Milwaukee's. Not that one. Not that one. Did I? Possibly not. There it is. Yep, wrong colour. I'm looking for black, not space grey. There we go. So here is an example of an adapter which I own, which is it's a, if you can see that in the camera, it says, not my name, but alongside it, it's not very legible, it says Satechi. I'm trying to get that light, there it is. Get the light right. Can you read that, Brett? Yep, it's the one that I happen to buy. This particular one has got a USB-C input. There's an Ethernet socket there. On this side, it's got 3 USB-A and HDMI. On this side, it's got micro SD and SD card. So that gives you a reasonable connectivity for a bunch of old stuff. I've used this reasonably often with modern Macs with USB-C ports. I have not tried it on an iPad because I don't yet have an iPad with a USB-C port. So the big question is going to be, if you want to run display through something like this, that's going to tie up a lot of the bandwidth on USB-C. So if you are trying to do display and other things at the same time, you may find that USB-C does not have enough bandwidth to achieve what you want to do. I'm aware, for example, that some of these things can do 4K displays. You'd presumably be limiting it to something smaller than that. Basically, the lower resolution the display, the better.
Yeah, just as I'll be just plugging in nets and data projector. And
okay,
so
1280 by 800 or something like that, maybe getting up to full HD, that sort of resolution. Okay, so.
The other option is iPad. If you want iPad 2, you could maybe do a 4K Apple TV or something through projector as well.
Well, that's the point. Shane's just mentioning you'd actually do the video wirelessly, possibly as a solution. Depends on what sort of setup you want, how it's going to be complicated. If you have an Apple TV, you can plug the Apple TV into your projector or screen, and depending on your network arrangements, you can connect the iPad wirelessly to the Apple TV and share its screen through that to the TV. That would free up the port, so the port can then be used for other stuff. And again, it boils down to a bandwidth question and then also a device support question as well. So the video part would be fine in terms of compatibility if you're going to go through the dongle. What were the other things you wanted to plug in?
Yeah, so it's an Epson data projector, set of speakers. I haven't got the Bluetooth speakers, but I do have perfectly good pluggable USB microphone type speakers. So yeah, I just want to use those because I've got them. Usually my iPhone XR, so I can hook up to the internet. I know I could do that wirelessly, but it actually plugging in through a USB cord seems to work one heck of a lot better.
Yeah, well, at least you can do that. You can do that wirelessly as long as you plug the phone into a separate power source, because it tends to drain the battery quite quickly if you try to do wireless personal hotspot. I use wireless personal hotspot heavily on my computer, and that works fine. I just have my iPhone on a QR, what's called a Qi charger all the time, so it just keeps charging it, keeps it topped up, and it's fine sharing Wi-Fi personal hotspot to my computer. So that's probably a better option for that one.
In regards to audio speakers and stuff, if the speakers aren't Bluetooth ones, you can also buy a Bluetooth adapter that allows you to hook up speakers to a Bluetooth adapter.
Yeah, so Shane's just suggesting you can get adapters to go to Bluetooth speakers if you need to do it that way. If you have plug-in speakers, what I'm not sure about is the degree to which all of these are going to work on an iPad without actually having experimented with it. And until I get to the point where I buy either an iPad Air, probably actually fourth generation. Yeah, I've got an iPad. I got an iPad Air 3. I only bought it 2 years ago, so I don't want to buy another one yet. So
this, I've got a 4 and Irene had a 3. And the 4's much faster.
Yes, but I don't use the iPad much, so I can't justify the cost of buying another iPad just to test things.
The 4 is much faster than the 3.
Yeah.
Much faster.
But it's not the speed of the iPad which matters, it's the speed of what's possible through the USB-C connection and how many devices it can support at the same time.
What
could be the best thing for Chris if he wanted to, and most shop owners, and that will have the gear there if he wants to make a bit within, if they've got an iPad already set up, they should be able to, if they want the cloud of the iPad, they should be able to go over what he's got and actually set it up in the physical shop.
Yeah.
To a point which would give you an actual rundown, Chris, before even buying the iPad.
Yeah, that might be a possibility.
See it doing what you want it to do.
Of course, you're in Gore, so we would be your nearest option for going to a shop that sells iPads.
We have them here in Gore, believe it or not.
No, I just wondering if they had anything local, like I don't know what, Harvey Norman's or Noel Leemings or something.
Even if there's a dedicated Noel Leemings down there that have the Apple person. There's usually Harvey Norman's or Noel Leemings or a dedicated Apple person that should be able to help you out with that, Chris. So, you know, at the end of the day, if they want the sale, you know, and it's the same with our guys too, and the tech side too. We go out of our way to try and help customers suit their needs, what they want the device for. So,
yeah. As far as the adapter goes, if you want one of these things, this particular one I bought from Noel Leemings, but they stopped selling them. I think it's later generation now, but there are a huge variety of alternative ones. Another one that I've got, which is a bit more substantial, which I did buy from Harvey Norman's. I don't know if I can actually get this in front. Actually, what I might do is use the other camera to show you what it looks like, rather than trying to lift it. I'll just switch cameras, hang on. I have here a little wee portable camera, semi-portable camera. Okay, so what we'll do is go camera, switch to Logitech webcam. Right, so what I have here, you can see this little gadget there. This is an A-Logic powered dock. So what this one does, I bought this from Harvey Norman's. It's got USB and audio out on the front, and on the back, it's got 3 USB ports, HDMI, Ethernet, and power in, and it actually provides power output, which is currently powering my MacBook Pro. So it's able to provide up to 100 watts. So that's powering, and it's got some mains power adapter and everything. So that sort of thing is available as well. Let me switch cameras back again. But you can also get, those are tending to be around about the $200 to $300 mark for that sort of hub. with power and everything. If you want one of the more portable ones like this, you can plug the iPad's power adapter into the USB socket on the end there, and that provides power through to everything. So that then means you can still power the iPad while it's running, or the computer. Though these tend to be limited to 60 watts rather than 100. So if you had a smaller laptop, it's all right, but not a monster like a 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is what I'm using. But they usually have more ports available, so it's not a problem. Via USB-C. USB-C can provide power delivery up to 100 watts if the device and the power supply support it. So, yeah.
That helps with its own power supply.
Yep, it's got mains power. So there are many options like that. Of course, if you want to test it, you need to have one of those things first. So probably a good idea is to pop into one of those sorts of stores and see what they have available, or do a bit of online research on websites like Harvey Norman's and Noel Leeming and Ascent and PP Tech and places like that, and to see what options they got in terms of USB-C. What do they normally call them? It's they're not called hubs, they're really called docks, portable docks, or that sort of thing. I'm not sure what the exact term they use is for those portable ones. You can get fancier and go up to Thunderbolt, but that won't work on an iPad. They're much more expensive. I've got a Thunderbolt station, which is basically a docking station for my laptop, which I keep on my desk at home. So I use this one, little one here,
More than
portably.
likely, the best bet would be Noel Leeming's or Harvey Norman's, because they've usually got their own Apple tables. And the Apple reps come in, the actual reps come in and set them up. So they're actually powered and ready to go, Chris. So that would be, it's the same with our store. We're a small electrical store, but we have got an Apple table, a small Apple table. So all the iPads are on there as well. But Noel's normally have, if you get specialised Apple ones like Tory Street and Wellington has a bigger table up there, and they usually have an Apple trained person. So yeah. I think that's going to be the best bet. PB Tech sometimes don't have those set up.
Yeah, they like I was in PB Tech around Boxing Day sale, and they'd run out of iPads. They sold all their display ones, so you couldn't even see one, let alone test one.
Yeah, usually you'll guarantee with Noel Leeming's and Harvey Norman's, we don't normally sell any displays until basically a new model comes out.
Yeah.
So they'll always be on the table.
So overall, my gut feeling is that you might run into some problems with some of those categories of things like speakers, if you're trying to use USB connectivity to get to them. Bluetooth or Wi-Fi is going to be a safer bet for some of the stuff, and Apple TV would be a possible option to consider. Though it's moderately expensive just to buy the Apple TV if that's the only thing you're doing it for.
If you're lucky enough, like I was lucky enough to pick up a 4K Apple TV. It was only about 3 months old. I got it for $150. So a guy bought it over lockdown and then didn't use it again. So it was very good because I upgraded my HD one because my TV is 4K. So if you shop around, you can get some deals. Yep.
We'll sort of follow up.
I assume the iPad Air doesn't have the 3.5mm audio connector. It all runs out through the USB-C, isn't it? Am I right?
I believe that's correct. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. There's one. This one of our audience has got one. So yes, he's confirmed that. Yeah.
The only other thing I was interested in saying about powered, because I was wondering if you start connecting lots of things, well, 3 or 4 things like I'm looking at, is ever going to be drawing too much power out through that. But as you say, they're okay.
Well, yeah. If you're relying on power out from the iPad, there will be a severe limit on how much it will supply. So I know from earlier iPad models, the Lightning connector, if you try to plug in a Lightning to USB adapter, which is supposedly for reading a camera, you can actually plug some USB peripherals into it, but many of them will say, no, you can't use that, too much power is being drawn. If you have a multi-headed adapter, which has this includes the Apple 3-pronged one, which has got HDMI, USB-A and USB-C. If you plug an external power source into that, you can get a lot more power because that powers the iPad and also provides power back through the other ports. So it may not give you the full capabilities of a typical USB hub, but it will be better. So that might be enough, but I think you'd really have to test it with the right combination of equipment, with a candidate adapter, with an iPad before you can be sure it would work, unfortunately.
Maybe hide some things off on
yeah, pushing things off to Wi-Fi would make things better, or Bluetooth. Yeah, because that would reduce.
Probably, I did look at the Wi-Fi side of things, but with start you tie buying adapters and all the rest of it, there's not a lot of difference between an iPad Air and then if I jump up to the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
The
MacBook Air's advantage will give you there's obviously a lot more software capability on the computer, but the double port is going to make a big difference for that. Yeah, I've got 4 ports on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I think I've never used more than 2 of them at a time. But if on rare occasions I want that extra capability, but you're then getting into high-end MacBook Pros to get more than 2 ports. So
well, I'm not really worried about the sort of work, because I wouldn't be using the iPad as a working as like doing things on it. It's more a display thing, because as a tutor, I'm sitting up in a room somewhere, so I'm showing PowerPoints, videos, and all the other little bits and pieces, other programs, Pages and Word and Excel, that sort of thing. So I'm really just showing things, but I'm not using it as a working machine as
yep. One thing that does occur to me there from past experience is that the iPad's external display support is a bit limited compared to a Mac. You don't get full control over whether you are mirroring or external display mode. It depends on the app you're running. Some apps, like Keynote, for example, on the iPad, use the external display as a presentation display, and you get the iPad's own screen as the presenter notes and so forth, and navigation controls. I don't think you can actually change that. Whereas on the Mac, you can switch between mirrored mode and extended display mode and decide which way you want to do it. Other apps, some of them will simply refuse to display anything on an external display because it doesn't know if it complies with copyright requirements. So if you're trying to watch certain videos, that sort of thing. So you need to be aware of that sort of potential limitation.
Thank you.
I hope that's helped you a little bit out there, Chris.
Yes, thank you very much.
No worries.
And Andrew's added a comment here. Also, the MacBook Air 2021 is supposed to have a slim profile and the return of MagSafe for faster charging. Yes, I mentioned that in my article. It's not that particular case, but it's a bit unclear what they're doing. But yeah. Okay. Shall we pause briefly just to do supper? And those who are remote, if you can take this opportunity to stretch your legs and get a drink or something like that, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes, hopefully, and we'll carry on with the main topic. Thank you. I'll stop recording temporarily. Okay, so just to repeat what I just said, so for the benefit of the recording. So tonight's main topic is disaster recovery. And what brought this up was the discussion at the last committee meeting where Graham related to the situation where his iMac's internal hard drive had died, and he was able to get the computer working again by plugging in an external hard drive, which I assume was via USB A. Part of it, right. That's right. It's a Fusion drive. So Graham's iMac has got the Apple's Fusion drive, which they've sold in some desktop Mac models. So it's Mac Minis and iMacs had this as an option at least. The Fusion drive is basically a small solid state drive combined with a big hard drive. So the older configurations tended to be 128 megabyte, do I have that right? Gigabyte, wrong order of magnitude, gigabyte it must be. Solid state drive paired with either a 1 terabyte or a 3 terabyte hard drive, depending on the model. And then in more recent times, Apple have wimped out on the solid state drive, and it's down to about the 24 gigabyte, sorry. So rather than 128, it's down to 24. So it's only basically big enough to fit the operating system. And when it's working normally, how it works is they are treated by the computer as a single drive. And files are written initially on the solid state drive and get copied internally to the hard drive as needed to, when there's not enough space on the solid state drive, or for infrequently accessed files basically get shoved off to the big hard drive, unless the files are big enough anyway, in which case when it creates a file, it creates it directly on the hard drive. It's all handled behind the scenes. The operating system is specifically tagged to stay on the solid state drive, and some applications might stay there as well if they're used often enough and that sort of thing. Frequently used documents might stay there. So what happened in Graham's case is the hard drive component of the Fusion drive failed. So then the computer was in the state where it knew it had a hard drive, I expect, and it didn't work anymore because it couldn't talk to it. And because they're paired, it wouldn't let you do anything. So effectively that made the computer useless. So this brought up the question of, okay, that's one example of things that can go wrong with a Mac. What are some other examples that people might run into? And what are some possible solutions that you might have, and then how do you deal with them in general? So to provide a bit of background, in fact, I'm wearing a t-shirt. Is that visible? I void warranties with all the screw heads.
To them, it's actually backwards.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Is it?
No, it's
Oh,
on the other screen. Just
on.
I can see it mirrored because it's on my one.
Yeah.
So in my one of my many hats, I do minor computer repair work. I have, for example, in the past pulled apart iMacs between around about 2006 and 2011 models to replace internal failed hard drives. This is not a task for the uninitiated. Up to that point, if you go back far enough, if you go right back to the iMac G3s, which are the bubble-shaped ones with a CRT display, the hard drive was actually quite easy to get to in those ones, so it wasn't hard to do. The iMac G4, which was the equipoise lamp sort of style white hemisphere base with the LCD on the screen, in those ones, you could take the outer layer off and you could access one memory socket. You couldn't get to the other memory socket of the hard drive without breaking a thermal sealing and getting inside the body of the machine, and you had to repair it afterwards, put it back together again. I've done this exactly once and would not want to do it again. Every subsequent iMac, the iMac G5s were the ones that introduced the computer behind the screen sort of pattern. So you had the big flat display, you had about an inch thick computer behind that, which included the hard drive and all components. The iMac G5, Apple had this wonderful design where you could take the back of the computer off and access all the components easily and repair things. It was wonderful. It was very, very easy to repair things. Along came the, I think, last generation of those, or definitely the Intel ones, and Apple decided, nope, we don't like that anymore. We want to make it so only our technicians can repair these things, so that rather than taking the back off, you've got to take the screen off to get inside it. So basically the process that I have to go through to repair a sort of a 2006-ish to 2011-ish iMac is to very carefully take the glass off the front of the screen and put it aside so it doesn't get any dust on it or scratches or get broken. Then unscrew the multiple screws that hold the LCD panel in. Then there's a variety of very carefully, intricately connected cables that you have to disconnect with detailed instructions with pictures, otherwise you will break something. And on average, it takes me approximately 2 hours to dismantle and reassemble one of those iMacs, all in order to get to the hard drive right buried in the middle of the computer to replace the hard drive, which I've done about 4 times, I think. There's a catch. Early days, that's all you had to worry about. In more recent years, Apple introduced a thermal management system where the hard drive itself has a proprietary connector which sends a signal to the computer to tell it what temperature the hard drive is running at. Which means if you replace the hard drive, the replacement one has to be a genuine Apple part. Otherwise, you don't get that signal. The computer thinks the hard drive is overheating and it runs the fans at full speed. So to deal with that problem, you then had to do either of 2 things. You either took your iMac, well, 3 things, I suppose. You took your iMac to an authorized Apple service provider who was able to replace it with a genuine Apple hard drive. Nobody else can get them, so that was out. I couldn't do it. Or you bought a third-party thermal sensor from Otherworld Computing, which attaches to the back of your hard drive to measure its temperature and has a cable which inserts into the cable between the computer and the hard drive. The computer then reads the temperature via that thing without having to actually do it on the hard drive, which is what I did about 3 times. Or you run software which forces the computer to slow the fans down, which is a bad idea because it might cause it to overheat in some circumstances. So basically, Apple kept making it harder and harder and harder. Now we come to the 2012 iMacs. If you have had a look at one, you will be aware of the fact that that's where Apple decided we like the tapered design, so that rather than being an inch thick solid body with an optical drive on the side and everything, it's nicely narrow on the sides and gets wider in the middle and the back. Those machines have a thermally conductive paste which glues the screen into the computer. If you want to take the screen out, you have to break all the thermal seals and you've got to reapply them all afterwards. It's more or less what happened with the iMac G4, but worse. I have never even tried to open one of those computers because I just don't want to have to deal with the horror of having to reapply all that thermal paste and getting it exactly right and risking overheating the computer and so forth. So the gist of it is that, in effect, unless somebody is sufficiently skilled and has all the right equipment, iMacs since about 2012 are effectively not user serviceable. The only people who can service them are authorized Apple service providers. So if you get something like a failed hard drive, you're looking at taking your Mac into a service provider who will charge you a minimum, probably $85 just to look at it. And then after you get past that point, they'll replace it with a genuine Apple part, which will cost you lots of money. And they will charge you labor costs as appropriate. There might be a standardized sort of service fee for them. They're probably technically more adept at doing the process than I would be because they've got the right tools and equipment, whereas I'm having to jury rig it from whatever I can get my hands on. But so it doesn't really matter how long it takes, they'll just charge you a fixed fee for it. In the process, they will want to effectively throw away your old hard drive, so you need to make sure you've got a copy of everything on it, and you end up with a replacement computer with a replacement drive, which then has nothing on it, or they may be able to restore the data if it was readable. But if it's failed, then obviously you're dependent on backups. So that is a typical situation you're running into with an iMac if your drive fails. So obviously the backups are critical. If you don't have backups and your drive fails, you're going to lose everything anyway. But the backup is the only way you're going to be able to get things working again while your computer is away getting fixed, because it might be a multi-day process as well. So if, for example, you had a spare older computer you could use, or you can borrow one or buy another one if you decide it's time to get a new one, you can then use your backup drive to access your data. Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah. So I'm just talking about iMacs. So that's up to what, 2017-ish iMacs when they introduced the Fusion drives. No, it was a bit earlier than that. I think I've got a 2012 Mac Mini, so it must be right back to 2012 or even earlier. When you have a Fusion drive, the software connects the solid state and hard drive together, and that's got to be redone using a slightly complicated process. I've never needed to do it, but I can find out the details if I need to. I don't think there's actually any technical problems doing that. It's just a knowledge issue. But if the solid state part fails, that is an Apple proprietary component. So you can't use the solid state drive. You can't replace the solid state drive yourself unless you can get a third-party drop-in replacement, which I believe is, might be some available from places like Other World Computing, but it's basically a US import. Graham?
It looks like it's a physical drive. It's powerful physical drive, I assume.
Partition, probably. Yeah, there's Graham just mentioned he's got a partition probably on his drive called update, which is likely to be an artifact of the way that APFS organizes its volumes, such that that happens to always be on the solid state drive part, so it still works. So yeah, and it'll the way that Fusion drives work has changed a bit with the new file system that they introduced in High Sierra, because the originally that was only available on pure solid state drives. They added Fusion drive support later, and Apple hasn't documented it very well, so I don't actually know how it all ties together. But I think how it works is you have a volume on your solid state drive and on your hard drive, which are bonded together, and you can have a separate volume on either drive, which is not connected, can be only on one drive or the other. It doesn't have to be on both. So it's possible to have a mixture of things from one or the other. So yeah, that's probably what you see.
I checked on disk utility. If you try to tell them the hard drive is not working, shows up.
Yeah.
So I do a disk repair on it. It comes up and says complete okay.
Yeah, but that's not going to help. You've got to rebond the two together if it's working. But if it comes and goes, it's probably a faulty hard drive, so I wouldn't trust it anyway. Yeah, so basically the Fusion drives, especially if one part of it fails, you effectively treat the whole thing as failed and you have to replace whichever part's faulty. So more recently, iMacs have also had solid state options, pure solid state that is, and that is actually the standard configuration of the latest models. They all have solid state drives now, unless you opt to get a Fusion drive as an option. It's normally a solid state drive. Those are also Apple proprietary parts. If they fail, the whole computer fails effectively, well, the internal storage does. Going on to laptops, that what I've just described is how all of Apple's laptops have worked since 2012 or 13, depending on the model. So in effect, every single Apple laptop has an internal solid state drive. I believe they're all socketed, but some of them might not be. I'm not sure about some of the 12-inch MacBooks, for example. And in theory, Apple can swap the drive, but end users can't because you can't get that component. It's an Apple proprietary component. So if your internal drive fails, you're looking at replacing it. So that leads the question of, if you have a faulty internal drive, can I just plug in an external drive and keep using my computer? If you go back far enough, the answer to that question is yes. And the cutoff point is basically, now I'm not entirely sure because I haven't tracked down the specific case yet. Another computer I've been helping someone with recently, it happens to be a 2013 MacBook Pro, which is the same model that I've got, my older one. In that case, the internal solid state drive failed. It was totally invisible to the computer. It was just totally dead. It's sudden, oh, my computer's just frozen. I'll restart. Nothing's happening. It didn't work. It gets displayed a blinking question mark or something like that at startup to say I don't have a drive anymore. In that case, they were able to plug in an external hard drive and get an older operating system working on it. I think we ended up, macOS Sierra 10.12 worked. High Sierra and later refused to work on that computer because High Sierra and later require you to install a software update for the firmware in the computer, and that can only be done on an internal drive. So you can't even install High Sierra or later on that computer or any software updates for High Sierra or later on that computer unless your internal solid state drive is working. So we got it working with Sierra, which was all right. And then she sent me the computer via the post, and then I installed Catalina, which is what she was previously running, and sent the drive back to her, and that worked. But she can't install any software updates until she gets her internal drive fixed, and that's going through third-party repair channels who basically salvage parts from other computers or something like that is still going to cost several $100s for now approaching 8-year-old computer. So it's a complicated situation generally. If your internal drive fails, you're potentially looking at a very expensive repair or replacing the computer in most modern Macs, basically from circa 2012 onwards. They're very dependent on the internal drive. Okay, so any questions at this point? That's the sort of the scenario which we actually covered. Does it sound like a reasonable story? So the question then is, what you do about it? So generally speaking, the reliability of these things is pretty good. Graham, your computer was a 2017 computer, so that's a pretty bad example of a hard drive failing within 3 years-ish of the computer being manufactured. Hard drives can fail at any time. They might fail as soon as you turn them on the first time. They might last for years and years and years. They usually tend to last a while and then start to flake out and die, but it varies a lot. So Graham got unlucky with that one. This 2013 MacBook Pro I was helping somebody with, that's basically a 7-year-old computer in a month or so, plus a month or so, and that's sudden death for no obvious reason. I have the same model. I've occasionally looked at its sort of wear leveling information. It's got something like 80% of its recommended lifespan left. So even though I've used my computer pretty heavily over 7 years, it's likely to fail for other reasons before the drive does for overuse reasons. So at the moment, I don't know what the problem is with that drive, whether it's just some electrical component failure or it's actually suffered a permanent fault with the storage. Margaret, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, under these conditions, what's the relative use then of a bootable backup versus time machine? The bootable backup contains all the applications that you've decided to put on your computer, whether they're third party or not, and of course the time machine probably has your most recent backups of all the stuff you've just been doing.
Yeah.
So,
okay. In the case of one of these computers with a failed internal drive, if you wanted to use a time machine backup, your options are basically to boot from the recovery volume, which should be a copy on the time machine backup drive, or if the computer's working well enough, you can get internet recovery working or something like that. And then you can restore the backup from the time machine drive to another drive. So I believe that would work okay if you were restoring to an external drive, and then you can boot from it and run it. So having a bootable backup really just saves you the wasted time of having to do that big restore operation, because you have to basically copy the entire hard drive backup from time machine to something else. The other option you've got with time machine backups is you can use the recovery volume to reinstall the operating system and then use migration during initial setup to copy the data off the time machine backup. That would fail in this case because the operating system install would refuse to proceed without the working internal drive. So you'd still be able to restore the backup from time machine to an external drive and boot from it, but you couldn't reinstall the operating system in the process. You'd have to do it by copying it from the backup. The clone method, where you've got a full copy of the computer, you should just be able to plug that into the computer and boot from it. That should be all right.
But I thought you couldn't do that after Sierra. I've got a bit confused. Presumably, if somebody puts a new hard drive in your computer, you can put anything you like on it.
Yes, well, you have issues about which operating system you can use, of course. You can't run any operating system older than the one that came with the computer, for example. And if you're restoring a backup, you can't run any operating system older than what you backed up. So if you were previously running High Sierra, for example, that's 10.13, you couldn't then install Sierra 10.12 and restore your backup from High Sierra. It wouldn't let you because it's too new an operating system. You can only go forwards, not backwards, unless you're manually copying data files. That's the only case where you can do that. All of the things that the operating system maintains are version dependent, so they can only go up, not down. So I don't think that actually makes a big difference in terms of time machine versus clones. It's more a question of convenience. I tend to use clone backups only for sort of archival. This is what my computer looked like at point in time X. I do it as a matter of habit update them every time I do a major software update, just so I've got a clone of it just before I did that update. And I have a set of drives that I rotate through, so I don't update the same one each time. So I have a copy at various recent update points, and I also have older archival copies at older operating system versions and things like that, just in case I ever need them. I've used them maybe 3 times in the time I've been doing that, so it's not a regular need, and it's fairly expensive. You have to buy another hard drive each time, so it adds up, and you've got this big growing pile of hard drives, so I'm not bothered to do that as much these days. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Of possibly greater concern is that M1 Macs and also recent Intel Macs with T2 chips change all the rules about what you can boot from. The Intel Macs with T2 chips by default will not boot from an external drive. They can only boot from internal drives. There is a security setting you have to go into via the recovery volume and turn off the secure mode, the security mode, or and allow a weaker level of security to let you boot from an external drive. So that's one complication. I think T2 Mac, sorry, Apple Silicon Macs are more straightforward. They have a different startup system, and I think you just need to go in and toggle a setting, and it will let you boot from it. But the T2 ones are a bit complicated because of their slightly weird infrastructure. So that applies to, I think, 2000 and maybe think it was the iMac Pro that introduced T2, so it was late 2017. So it's basically 2018 and onwards. Every model except an iMac that was introduced from that point has got a T2 chip in it. I think the 27-inch iMacs, the latest models, do as well. So it's only 21-inch iMacs that still don't have them. Graham?
What I did mind was I managed to have an external drive from ICA, which I booted from. The internal drive had a big server, which I wasn't able to get back within so I managed to get High Sierra upgraded to Catalina, so now I'm at Catalina. Which is allowing me to run all the software that I had on Big Sur, contact and logic and everything else. And all my software is backed up onto Time Machine, all my applications and everything else. And I've been able to get that out of Time Machine just by going through the finder.
Manually copying things. Yep.
Now,
Yep.
I know there's probably issues with the way it's all been preserved on Time Machine, but I haven't even done so far. One of the questions I have about that is, how can I utilise the Time Machine backup I've got with the new operating system?
You mean your restored older operating system? Okay, that's another case. That's basically another case where you can't go backwards. Once you've done a backup with a newer operating system, you can't revert to an older one and then continue to use the same drive to back up your computer because they're version dependent. And I think Catalina and Big Sur both changed the format of the Time Machine backups in a way that the older operating systems don't understand, so they can't modify them. Yeah, you basically, if you're in that situation, your options are A, erase your Time Machine backup and start again, or B, put it aside, get another hard drive and start again from scratch. So you keep the old one as a reference copy, which is what I tend to do. I've got a much older Time Machine backup drive floating around somewhere at home, which when I swapped to a new drive, I just kept the old one there. So I had it as an archival backup in effect, and that doesn't get used again after that point. So it's a question of what you can really afford. Peter, I see a hand up. Yep.
Just a side question about that. When you buy a new drive, you have to format it in particular. And if it's a
if you're going to use it for Time Machine, and it's easier if you haven't got your computer set up for Time Machine backups, because if you do that, you buy a brand new hard drive, you plug it in, and you go into Time Machine and tell it to use that drive. It says, oh, and this drive needs to be formatted for the Mac. Would you like me to do that for you? And would you like me to encrypt it and various other options? That's the easiest way of doing it. It will automatically set it up for you. If you are, I think it also does that if you add another drive to your existing list of Time Machine backup drives. I don't have any Time Machine backups on this computer. I do on this one. If I go here and go share screen there, and I go into system preferences, Time Machine, well, there we go. Happens to show my set of, I've got 3 different Time Machine backups on this computer. So I've got 2 drives I keep at home and 1 that I keep at work. So I've got them in different locations and the computer goes back and forth with me. So I just plug them in wherever I am. And then if I go add or remove backup disk, I need to actually have a drive to plug in, so I can't easily demonstrate this, but that shows you the list of drives that I've already got. And I could choose, I won't actually do this, but if I click on that one, if I chose use disk at this point, which I don't want to do, and that was not a Mac formatted drive, Time Machine would say, this drive needs to be formatted for the Mac. Would you like me to do it for you? So as long as you do it the right way, it's actually easily handled. You don't need to do anything special to set it up in advance. No, it will do it for you if it needs to, because it can't use a Windows formatted hard drive to back up using Time Machine.
There are more than one options for the Mac format.
Yes, there are. Time Machine doesn't even ask you for the options, it just chooses the right one.
So if you're looking to say make a backup drive of all your photos, it doesn't need to be Time Machine backup.
No, if you're just wanting to do copies of things. Okay, so if you're looking at a manually managed backup of something like photos, the key question is, where do you want to be able to access them from? If you would like to potentially have that drive and plug it into a Windows computer, then you need to be using a file system that Windows will understand without doing anything complicated. And your best option there is one called exFAT, E-X-F-A-T. That is a more up-to-date version of the old Windows FAT 16, FAT 32, etc., which supports bigger files and bigger disks and so forth. The Mac, as of the middle of Snow Leopard and Windows XP and a half or later, can read and write that format. So that means if you use exFAT format, then everything can read it and everything can write it that matters. I don't know whether Linux can, so if you need to deal with Linux, that's a question for further research. If you only want to use it on the Mac or other Macs, then you've got effectively about 8 choices, depending on the operating system version. If you're running High Sierra or later, that's 10.13, it supports the new file system, which is APFS, and that doubles the number of choices roughly. So Older operating systems don't support APFS. So if you want to be able to access the drive potentially from a Mac running an older operating system, you can't use APFS as your file system. You have to use macOS Extended, as it's best known. And then within macOS Extended, there are 4 sub-options. There is with or without case sensitivity and with or without journaling. The correct option is not case sensitive and journaled. Journaling basically means that if the drive crashes or gets unplugged or loses power or whatever in the middle of writing directory information, I've got a backup copy of it and it won't corrupt the directory. If you don't have that and something goes wrong, you could lose everything on the drive spontaneously. If something like you unplugged it in the middle of it doing something to it, or computer had a kernel panic or something. Case sensitive versus not case sensitive really boils down to if you have a reason to need a case sensitive file system, which most people don't, then you can use that option. There is some applications that don't like it though. Adobe is one of the examples. If you happen to use Adobe Photoshop or other related products, they cannot cope with being installed on a case sensitive file system. They don't understand it. Since they do, but effectively what they do is they have files that the application refers to, which are sometimes referred to as mixed case and sometimes referred to as all lowercase. And those 2 files are different on a case sensitive file system, but they're not if it's not case sensitive. So you need to basically you want the backup drive to match your internal drive, and unless you've done something very weird, your internal drive is not case sensitive. So do not use the case sensitive option unless you know what you're doing. Is the but do use journaling. It's definitely worth it. There are also encryption options, which I can't remember off the top of my head whether that's listed as yet another sub option within that. That gets very ugly very quickly. Basically, as long as you're only going to access it on Macs running reasonably recent operating systems, and I think it's sort of Lion-ish onwards, 10.7, is that? Yeah. It can support an encryption mechanism on a macOS Extended volume where you define a password at the point you start encrypting the drive or when you erase it, and then for any computer to mount it, they've got to type that password in or they can't access it at all. And everything's encrypted using that password or derivative of it. So I use that for my time machine backup. So if somebody steals my backup drive, they can't use it. My computer, I've saved the password in my keychain, so I don't need to keep typing in all the time. So if they stole my computer and my hard drive, backup hard drive, and managed to get into my computer, they could, and they guessed my password on my computer, then they could get access to it. But other than that, it's reasonably safe. So that's macOS Extended. The more modern operating systems use APFS, which is the new Apple file system. That has somewhat similar options. I think it's got case sensitive or not, and I don't think it's got journaling because it always is journaling. I'll have to have a look, but I don't have one handy to easily check. If you know you're always going to be accessing it on recent operating systems, that might be a reasonable option. But if you want to keep the option of reading it on older operating systems, I'd say stick to macOS Extended.
So to take a really large file arrangement away with you to show people on their TV, to plug into a smart TV.
Then you've got an even bigger problem. No, exFAT is probably not supported by TVs because TVs are probably running Linux, and exFAT is not commonly supported on Linux because it's got Microsoft patents on it, and Microsoft don't want to license it to Linux people for some insane reason. I think it may have changed in recent years. That's what I understood it to be a few years ago anyway. So your best option there is to use MS-DOS brackets FAT32. Which is basically the fallback option, which is readable and writable on Macs and Windows. Windows refuses to use it for anything reasonably big, and you cannot put files larger than, I think it's 4 gigabytes. It's either 2 or 4 gigabytes, I can't remember which is the file size of one of those two, is on the drive. But basically, that's not a problem in terms of folder sizes, only individual file sizes. So if you've got a monstrously large Photoshop document that happens to be bigger than 4 gigabytes, it won't go on that drive. But if it's a folder containing hundreds of, well, like a few gigabytes, worst case for a photo, that's, sorry, a few megabytes typically for a photo, not from off again by order of magnitude. And you might be getting up to the tens of megabytes for particularly high resolution or something like that. That's fine. MS-DOS brackets FAT32 is how it writes it.
I think when I put my hard drive onto my TV, it automatically gave me the option anyway, and I just chose it. It automatically found the option.
Yeah, the other way you can do it is to set the drive up using the TV. You actually plug in the TV and format it, and then you can access it from the computer. Sometimes you have to deal with particular folder structures they insist on as well, so you've got to put the files in the right place for the TV to recognize them. Sometimes they're set up to assume you're plugging a digital camera in, so you've got to mimic the structure of a digital camera.
Also with the TV, make sure you stick it in the 5 volt USB one, the one that's got the high power on. There's usually one that's marked higher. Well,
it's marked as the right plug to use. I've made that mistake.
The other one is a low powered one.
When I got a backup drive attached to my TV, which I can use to record Freeview off it. And when I rearranged everything, when our fibre got installed, I unplugged it all, and when I plugged it back in again, I've got the wrong port, and the TV said, "No, don't do that. Plug in the port." So it told me. So that was okay. I just wasn't looking around the back closely enough to see which port I'd like to. Not going to damage it. It's just not going to work.
But it's just back.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
You mentioned APF file system.
Yep.
When did that start?
High Sierra. It went through several stages though, and it's still being developed. So High Sierra only supports it on solid state drives. Mojave added support for fusion drives and hard drives.
We've got a solid state drive on the WelMac. So it's using, and that's 2019.
Yeah, it'll be at least Mojave, if not newer. In that case, I think you're running Catalina, or aren't you, or Least or something like that. Anyway, the internal drive and the external drive are separate questions. Yes. It doesn't matter what your internal drive is. Your external drive can be completely different.
Okay, so I'm running 3 external drives. I'll take one out and run 2.
Yeah.
And I've got them set up as Mac OS Extended Journal.
Yeah.
And GUID partition.
Yeah, that's another question as well.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the native.
BFF?
That's the old one. That's the native older native Mac file format. So that's GUID or master boot record or Apple partition mat, APM.
Really confused.
Yeah, those things you don't need to deal with if you erase the drive as an entire drive. It only matters if you're going to try and partition it or set up individual partitions or something like that. Normally it picks the correct one for the file system that you chose. So if you choose Mac OS Extended, when you erase the drive, it will automatically set it up with the GUID partition table or GPT.
Yeah. I think GUID came up.
Yeah.
What I found out was that one of my earlier drives wasn't GUID. And so I erased it and started again. And
it fixed it, yeah.
And it fixed it. So I'm running the right.
Yep. Yeah, so if you're using that distinction is getting far more complicated. That's how the information about the partitions on the drive is managed. And older Windows operating systems don't understand GUIDs. They won't even know what it is. If you format a drive using MS-DOS FAT32, the whole drive, Mac OS will normally use master boot record, which is the old primitive Windows partitioning table. GUID is far more powerful and it's able to support more complicated things than its native Mac one. But what you usually find is if you get that wrong, some things won't work. And one example is you can't boot a Mac drive reliably from master boot record. You have to use GUID.
So that was my next question.
Yeah.
Can I, if it dies, can I boot from any one of my hard drives?
If they are time machine backups, usually yes. And what it does is it when Time Machine creates a backup drive on an Intel Mac, it copies the recovery volume from the internal drive and keeps a backup copy of it on the external drive. So if you try and boot from the external drive, it actually boots from a backup copy of the recovery volume, which then lets you restore the entire Time Machine backup. And that's about all you can do with it. And like you can restore the entire operating system, restore the Time Machine backup, run Safari in limited mode, or run disk utility or that sort of thing. That's about all it can do. So you can't run your applications from it, for example, because they're there, but they're not accessible because it doesn't have Finder or anything like that. So it's just the standard recovery volume user interface.
So you can eventually restore.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the sort of the fallback option. If your internal drive's failed and you have no internet connection and you've managed to replace the internal drive, you can use that method to restore your internal drive or something like that.
But if you had internet connection,
Then you could use internet recovery, download the recovery volume from Apple, and then use that to restore the time machine back up. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah. There's some subtleties there. If you told it not to back up your operating system, it doesn't back up the recovery volume either. But that's an extra option you have to go into and exclude the system folder or something like that. So unlikely you've done that. Yeah. On Apple Silicon Macs, it gets far more complicated because they don't have recovery volumes as such. They've got a more complicated infrastructure, which I'm still getting my head around, so I won't go into them. And I'm the only person I know who's got one so far. So yeah, we'll get in there. Okay, so any last questions on the hard drive front? So I think I've sort of covered all of that. You've got to be very wary of external drives if your internal drive's failed. I should mention, by the way, that I know 2 people at least who've got an external solid state drive resembling this little thing plugged into their iMac, simply because the internal hard drive is so painfully slow they couldn't bear it anymore, and they've cloned their internal drive to one of these, plugged into a USB port, and configured their computer to boot from the external drive, and that works a hell of a lot better because this thing is what, 500 megabyte per second transfer rate rather than 150, and doesn't have seek delays. So it's just enormously faster, even though it's going via USB. Yeah.
How does the speed of USB 3 compare to the internal bus?
Depends on what we're talking about. If you are talking about an internal hard drive, they operate from SATA, which has a theoretical limit of 600 megabytes per second. It's not actually that fast. It's really 80% of that or something like that. USB 3 has a theoretical limit of 5 gigabits per second, or 500 megabytes per second. So we're talking 5/6 of the maximum speed of the bus for the internal drive. However, an internal hard drive typically maxes out at around about 150 to 200 megabytes per second anyway, so it can't use all the speed of the bus in the first place. So the effect is, as long as your USB bus is not busy, there's no speed penalty, or very little. It's just the protocol over here which slows things down a little bit. So not to worry about. USB 2, on the other hand, if you were limited to that on an older model, that is not even worth going there, because it's a difference between 150 and about 30 megabytes per second, and if you're lucky. It's usually slower than that, so it's really sluggish. It's usable in an emergency, but I wouldn't want to live on it as my primary boot system. And that's basically 2011 or earlier Macs. They don't have. That's where you start to look at FireWire instead of USB, because it's at least twice as fast if you can get FireWire 800. Yeah, well, USB-A is reverse the connector. 2003 through to 2011 Macs had USB 2.0. Older ones were USB 1.1, which was orders of magnitude slower again, and you really don't want to boot those ones like an iMac G3 from USB. That's just no. FireWire in that case was 400 megabits per second compared to 12 megabits per second. So yes, that was FireWire was definitely worthwhile on those machines. Okay, I think I've exhausted the hard drive thing. Only other things I wanted to mention in that area were warranties versus AppleCare, versus relying on your own luck. The benefit of AppleCare is usually dubious, because it costs you a fair amount. You're basically betting something's going to go wrong with my computer in the first 3 years, and because it's got AppleCare, Apple will fix it faster than they would otherwise. And it will not cost you much, hopefully. If it's a physical damage thing, AppleCare Plus is now available, and that gives you protection from up to 2 physical incidents. Like if you drop your laptop, for example, and you break it, they will actually charge you a reasonable fee for replacing the failed parts, rather than you need a new laptop, which is if you don't have AppleCare Plus. It's not worth it. It's basically an insurance replacement at that point. I have mixed feelings about Apple Care. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. I think I've never actually benefited from it, because the thing that's gone wrong with my computer has been covered by a warranty extension that Apple did for a particular fault, something like the display cover laminating off, or the screen needing to be replaced, or something like that. So there is also the factor of the New Zealand Consumer Guarantees Act. If your computer fails within what somebody regards as an unreasonable amount of time, then you can get it repaired by the manufacturer anyway. So Apple Care is probably not worth the expense, except in terms of, I need this fixed quickly. If you have Apple Care Plus, there's no arguments.
Yeah, just on a thought on that, and that's pretty, Anna's not here. She came and saw me actually after the Christmas break. She was going through a hassle at the moment with her laptop. She did own the Consumer Guarantees Act, and she actually won, and it actually went well over what the warranty was on the laptop. And she actually did it with Service Plus. And she actually fought the battle with the Consumer Guarantees Act and won, and she was absolutely wrapped because they actually came to the party, and it was her forethought and her drive that just kept nagging at them with Consumer Guarantees Act, and she got her problem sorted and got it fixed. And yeah, she actually came in and told me that.
Yeah.
Just as a thing, because she had some known issues with the laptop.
Apple doesn't appear to publicise it, but they apparently have an internal guideline for list of rules for how long they regard various components in the computer as being covered for under the Consumer Guarantees Act. And so if certain, like the battery fails, for example, in a laptop, that won't be covered as long as the storage, because it's a consumable part. One of my sets of headphones failed about a week after its official warranty expired, and I was able to get that replaced under Consumer Guarantees Act. It was an Apple product, and they debated it because I think it was 2 years old at that point, and they said that they only covered it for 2 years under Consumer Guarantees. It was 2 years and a week or two. That was Service Plus. I had to actually talk to Apple as well, I think, to deal with it.
So you did it through the service?
I think I did it. I went talking to them to investigate it. They said it's not going to be repairable. You have to replace it. I then complained about it under Consumer Guarantees Act, and it didn't take long for them to agree that was. And they talked to Apple first and something like that, and they decided to extend it because it was working fine, and then suddenly stopped working, and it appeared the battery had failed. Suddenly it was working perfectly up to that point. So it's like a fault, not a battery wearing out thing. Yeah, so that's worth keeping in mind anyway. I don't like the manufacturers or the retailers extended warranties you pay extra fees for, because those just seem to be charging you money in the off chance that they'll get something fixed.
More than consumer protection, except that you don't have to argue your case.
Yeah. Some similar sort of thing to
If you
happen.
can argue your case, then you're wasting your money. Sorry.
Margaret, I see you've got a hand up.
I know you guys like
yeah, but it's different for us, and I won't go into the politics with that one, but it's we're forced to sell it, so
we understand that. We're forced to tell you we don't want it.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
It's basically an extra income stream for the retailer. So yeah. Margaret, I see you have your hand up. What was you do a comment?
Oh, yes, I too found Service Plus was good at negotiating with Apple about the Consumer Guarantees Act. But in addition, I wanted to ask you how much the Apple Care cost, because just before lockdown, my computer was at Service Plus, and I didn't realize that they were, what do you call it, an essential service. So I opted to pay the $90 to get my computer back extra quickly. You mentioned that was perhaps the main advantage of the Apple Care. So how much do you have to pay for the Apple Care?
Okay, Apple Care varies considerably depending on the model. Apple's got a price list on their website, I think. For example, I know from past experience that a 15 or 16-inch MacBook Pro, it's in the order of $500 for Apple Care. And for so iPads, higher end iPads are 250-ish. I know that some models it's a bit cheaper than that. It's sort of typically in the $200 to $500 range
So for speed of service, it's not worth it. You just pay your $90 and off you go.
Yeah, if it's something which is like going to be covered anyway, it's yeah, it's debatable. I think I've generally gone with it for my main computer simply because I want it fixed quickly without arguments, because I don't want to have to deal with it. I use it, yeah, I'm using it for work and things. So, but I have randomly for some of my iPhones, I didn't bother with the latest one. I forgot about it actually until it was too late. You have a time limit how long you can buy Apple Care after you buy the thing. And I was about a week over. I thought, oh, I should get Apple Care. Oh, well, too late, doesn't matter. And then there's a question of, do I drop it? Will I drop it before the 2 years? I managed to drop my previous one under Apple Care 2 or 3 times and didn't break it. My current one I've dropped 2 or 3 times and also haven't broken it. So
It also depends on what protection and case you've got on as well.
Yeah, I'm just using.
You've got a relatively protective case on it.
I've only got the Apple leather case, so the corners have got a bit dinged because, and it's fallen down and bounced around a bit on softish floors, not on hard concrete much. So it's not too bad.
You're going to want to stand fast at least 3 times. It's not worth it. I mean, you might as well just pay service plus your $90.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so any other faults people wanted to briefly talk about? I just wanted to sort of touch base very quickly on obvious things like my computer won't turn on, check your power cord, try a different power cord, try possibly the power adapter if it's a laptop. Laptops in particular sometimes get into a failure state where they seem to not turn on. What's actually happened is they haven't finished shutting down. So you can try holding the power button down to force it to shut down for long enough, and then let go and putting in, it starts up and it's perfectly okay. I've seen that once or twice. There's little subtleties like that. It's definitely worth asking the question before you go panicking thinking your computer's died. If your screen is not working, that's a somewhat common fault, or it's developed some major obvious fault where there's lines going through or something that you can't read, or half that's not working. I've seen that with a few iMacs and laptops and things like that. Sometimes an easy solution to that is if you can find somebody who's got an external display and plug it in and confirm that it's working all right. Otherwise, and it's just your screen, you might be able to at least then get stuff off the computer if you need to, that sort of thing. I know somebody who had an iMac that had half their screen die, and they actually bought an external monitor, plugged into the iMac and ran the iMac behind the other screen, so for a considerable period of time. So that worked. And it would just need to be a mirroring mode. And laptops, you can do a similar sort of thing. At home, I've got 3 monitors I can plug into my laptop if I need to. So that works quite nicely.
Mirroring mode if you can't see.
Yeah, well, you need to be able to see it in the first place. But by default, it goes mirroring mode if you've never used an external display. If it's an extended display mode, there is actually a keyboard shortcut to toggle mirroring mode on and off, if I remember right. I think it's Command F2 or something like that. I'd have to go and look it up, but I seem to recall that. Well, it's one of the brightness control keys. If you've got, if it's on a touch bar, it might be separate. But if you've got the row of modifiers, special function keys on your keyboard with F1, F2 with the brightness controls, I think Command F2 toggles mirrored versus extended mode on those models that have got that particular feature. So that works reasonably nicely. Now, we just quickly look at my email here and just refresh my memory because I had an email I sent. Yeah, they've all gone away. I emailed Humphrey, just telling him. No, not that one. Oh, yeah, disaster recovery. I gave him a quick list of what I wanted to cover. Software versus hardware problems. That's always a big problem. I don't want to go into that because it's going to take too long. Sometimes your computer won't start up. It's a software problem, not a physical fault. So getting it diagnosed in some way, whether it's asking me or taking it into Service Plus or something like that, they'll charge you just to look at it, but so will I probably. It's not a hot desk. Built-in diagnostics and recovery tools. I don't want to go into that because it's going to take too long. Backups. I think I've already emphasized backups are critical. I wanted to mention iPhone backups. People here got iPhones who are not backing them up regularly to iCloud, preferably, because that's the easy method. Right, if you've got a computer running either Catalina with Finder or iTunes using older operating systems, you can back up to that and save a backup. Yeah, that's good, but that's the easy method and doesn't require paying.
Then the iMac is backed up.
Yeah. But the key point there is that there is a backup of the phone. If the phone gets lost or damaged, then you can restore it from the backup that you last did in the computer. The key issue is keeping it updated regularly. The nice thing about iCloud backups is that they happen automatically whenever the computer's got a Wi-Fi, their phone's got a Wi-Fi connection and power, and its screen's off. So every night, typically, you recharge it and it's on, it'll back itself up to iCloud. The disadvantage is that most phones, you can't fit your backup in the free 5 gigabytes, so you have to pay Apple for more storage. So the question is whether you want to pay Apple at least $2 a month for the 50 gig, or more than that if you need more than that. If you have a computer that you're able to do that with, that's definitely a good idea. Yeah. No, but even for example, contact lists will typically sync to iCloud, so they would stay there anyway. It's only the things like the photos. If you aren't using iCloud photo storage or you aren't syncing them to the computer, you'd lose recent photos. Yeah, so you'd be typically doing that whenever you want to get the photos on the computer. So you risk of losing the last month's-ish photos, which is a bit of a worry. But yeah.
Then they're also on the other iPhone and the other iPads. So they all seem to be connect up to each other.
You're not using iCloud for that because iCloud Photo Library does that.
What's it called? It's not storage in the cloud, but it's via the cloud. There's two features. There's iCloud. I can never remember what they're called. No, not that. Under iCloud Photos, there are two options. There's iCloud Photo Library, which is the one I'm using. That actually stores my photo stream. That's it. My photo stream basically syncs the last 1,000 photos you've taken via iCloud without charging you for it, and it lets you just copy them, and that just gives you a convenient way. Okay, that's a useful method as long as you have backups as well for the older stuff. Yep. Whereas I'm using iCloud Photo Library, I actually pay Apple, in my case, $5-ish a month, which gives me 200 gigs of storage, and I've got about 60 gig of that used for my photo library, I think, or something like that. Yep. So that means that my entire photo collection is on iCloud synced to everything. That simplifies things, but I have to pay for it. Yeah. Okay, so nobody here is in the I'm not backing up situation.
Is there any equivalent to Time Machine for?
Hang on a second, mate. Peter's just asked me. Yep. Yes. Yeah. When you back up to a computer, you have the option of defining a password for the backup. If you do that, it backs up everything, including like account information and things like that. If you don't, it doesn't back up some stuff. So it's the encrypted backup of the iPhone or iPad. And the trick is, what you have to do is make sure you save the password somewhere so you don't forget it.
Does that come in relatively recently?
No, it's been there for ages. I've used it for a long time. No.
It's when you tick the encrypted.
I started doing that. Basically, I did it with my hard drives and I got robbed that time. Because I got robbed and my computer got taken. Then I did it.
There it is. Yeah, I have a series of iPhone backup passwords which are stored in my keychain. So I chose the option to save the password in my keychain. If you didn't, you have to remember the password. iTunes and the device will remember it for you, but if you replace the device, you are asked the password again, you can't use it if you don't know the password. So you're basically, your backup is ruined at that point because you don't know the password. But if you tell a computer to save it in the keychain, then it's retained as long as you don't lose the computer, which is where the backup is anyway. So that's an important option.
So if I do a backup on the physical computer,
yep.
And then also a team to do the iCloud, do I have two options?
Normally it's either or. You configure the using iTunes or later operating systems to do the Finder instead. You specify whether you want backups going to iCloud or to the computer. Yeah. So it's a toggleable setting. Yeah, but
And
if,
then I think I want to do an
yeah,
additional one.
you can manually do a backup using iTunes or Finder.
How do you choose it? How do you choose which one you're going to use?
Well, you just tell them to do a backup. There's a backup now button in iTunes. Yep. What do you mean? How it's? Hang on. If I go share screen here, so that Margaret can see this as well. Hello. I have my iPhone plugged in on this computer. This is running Catalina, so that's Finder. If I click on my iPhone, just plugged in at the moment, I've got to say trust first of all, otherwise I won't recognize it. I should have done that already. So this is similar to the interface that's in iTunes and all the operating systems. Can you see that okay, Margaret? Yeah, you should be able to. Yep.
Yep.
Here. Okay. So in here, we've got, this is all, here we go. So under backups, you'll see it's grayed out. Backup your most important data on your iPhone to iCloud. So this is not the computer I normally would plug this phone into, so it's probably not set up for this computer. Oh, there we go. Now it's finished in sync now, so now it's loud. So you can see it's radio button, so you can choose that your normal setting is either backup to iCloud or backup to this computer. There is an encrypted local backup. I can change the password. So that password, this computer doesn't know, so it won't be able to do backups. That computer knows it, not this one. Last backup was to iCloud on the 18th of January. I don't use this phone very often, so I'm not worried about that. There is a backup now button, which will back up to iTunes, will back up to the computer. So if I click that, has got any kind of progress information? I can't see anything. No, it's doing it now.
Oh yes, the rotating one on the left. Yeah, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Ah, yes. It knows the previous password, which is in the keychain, which is synced via iCloud. So this computer can access the password. So it needs to know that password to be able to back up the phone. So that's now doing a backup. I don't like the way that Finder displays its progress information compared to all the systems. They've reduced the amount of detail. Now, what's that telling me in terms of what this is doing? And Snitch is telling me that we're doing an awful lot of mail Zoom. That's all Zoom. Okay. Yep, I'm on an unlimited connection for 24 hours, so that's all right. Get that out of the way. How do I get that out of the way? I need to hide floating meeting controls. Thank you. So I can access the top of that window and close it again. Okay, so that is definitely not doing a backup to iCloud, otherwise it would be using a lot of internet traffic. So that backup now button is always meant to the computer, no matter what the setting says. So it's a manual one-off backup, which you can do whether or not you've got your device configured to normally back up to iCloud. And then that gives you, once you've done that, I haven't actually gone hunting to see where they hide them in Catalina, but in iTunes on Mojave and earlier, you can go into iTunes preferences, and then from in there you get to there's a devices category which gives you a list of all the backups, and from there you can delete all backups and that sort of thing if you need to, if you're wasting too much space.
You can also hover over those backups as well. It will actually give you the ID points of which your devices to.
Yeah, it tells you which device it belongs to, because it's sometimes that's hard to tell. Oh, there we go.
So if you do find the old ones, you can delete them.
That'll be the manage backups button, which is it's given the progress, so you can see that. Yeah, so it's done about 8% of it. So there's a fair amount of data on this phone, so it might take a while. I was thinking about it and now it's doing backup, so I'll let that finish. But that's yes, good.
Syncing is totally different from backup.
Yeah, syncing is to do with media, potentially contacts if you're not using iCloud, that sort of thing, calendars, that sort of thing. So it's data which is intended to be up to date on all devices. Backups is copy of everything on your device to get it back to the state it was in. So it's all the data on all your apps, but not the apps themselves, but the list of apps and where they are on the screen is part of the data. So that sort of thing. So you can use the backup to restore your phone to its previous state.
When you connect that sync straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really depends on what you configured for syncing. So this machine is not configured to sync, so it might be actually. Oh, excuse me, it won't do iCloud. So currently it's not set to sync anything on this computer. No, it's set to sync books for some reason, I don't know why. This is running Catalina. So Catalina, they moved all the iTunes functionality into separate applications. So it's split into music, podcasts, TV, and they've moved the device management into Finder, which makes more sense anyway. So the user interface is the same as it was on iTunes, more or less the same as it was on iTunes, but for that part. Yeah. Same problem for me. So I'm just waiting for. Well, I've mentioned in my article, which you'll get to see when I release the magazine. Apple did the release candidates of the latest versions of Big Sur iOS 14.4 and so forth on Friday last week. So that means this week, unless there's an unusual delay, they will be releasing the next minor updates with feature changes and security updates and bug fixes. So this is the next point at which there is a possibility they might fix the mail bug. Whether they do or not, I don't know until somebody comments on it.
Isn't there about we run iPads and iPhones, so we look at the mail and occasionally.
I haven't actually heard of the problem being an issue on the iPad.
I think if you delete it on one of them, it deletes on another.
That's what it's supposed to do. That's okay. It's not deleting that's the issue, it's moving. If you move a message between two mailboxes on IMAP accounts in Apple Mail on Catalina or Big Sur, sometimes it deletes the message from the server and it's gone forever everywhere.
Yeah. And we get that funny message. I've sent one and sent an email on the iPhone, looked at it on the iPad, and it said this format is incorrect. Go back to where you formatted it. And it gives you the title and the time, and then it's in italics, basically. And I've come across that.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I'm not sure if I don't think that's related. I think that's a different problem. Okay. That's just the iPad hasn't decided to download the message content, it's only got the summary.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a different problem. I don't know what causes that. I don't know how to fix it either because it's so the mail application on the iPad is so primitive compared to the Mac one, which is unreliable, but at least is more functional.
So it's more to do with the iPad.
Yeah.
And so that's what my mail is running on provided email on the iPad. That's the reason why I can't go to all Big Sur is a different problem.
Yeah, as far as I know, this problem does not affect pop accounts and doesn't affect local on my Mac folders, only iMac folders. So if you, for example, have a message which arrives which gets sorted automatically into junk, but it's not junk and you want to take it out of the junk box and put it back into the inbox, there is a risk that it will be just deleted when you try and do that. No, pop accounts don't behave the same way because they're not actually using multiple folders on the server. Oh, you might be right then, but you're on Catalina anyway, so that's okay. But I've got a mixture of Exchange, Gmail, iMac, and pop accounts. So I'm vulnerable to everything, which unfortunately also means there's a seriously limited number of mail clients I can use because I found a possible candidate which only supports IMAP and Gmail. Doesn't support Exchange and doesn't support POP, so I can't use it. Margaret, I see you got a hand up there. Oh, we've finished now. I'll just have a quickly. There we go. So I've done a backup of my iPhone 10, and it tells me that's the pop-up information. So it's saying the technical information about the phone, so the serial numbers and that sort of thing. And it doesn't tell you anything useful about the backup, but if I go right-click on there, I should be able to say Show in Finder, and from there, the file name's unintelligible. You've got to use the user interface to work out which one's which, but that will, you can use a get info to find out how big it is. That's a 19 gig backup of that phone. Yeah. That is actually stored in
the same place as it was in earlier systems: library, application support, mobile, sync, backup. And it's exactly where iTunes kept it in the recent operating system. So they haven't changed. Just the user interface. Right, Margaret. So is this a question relating to the?
It is. Can you defeat the possibility of losing a message by copying it to somewhere else instead and making sure it turns up?
Good question.
And then
You copy it rather than move it, because you can copy a message rather than moving it. Well, you can forward it, but that's unnecessary. It just adds an extra chunk of text on it. I'm not sure about that actually.
If you copied it, then you could delete the original if it succeeded.
I seem to remember that. I'd have to go and look at the discussion through about the problem again. But my gut feeling is that that is actually something. I'll push the escape key. Do I? Yes, there it is. And then stop sharing. So we go back to normal again. My gut feeling is that somebody mentioned that and said it didn't work, but I've forgotten why. I have to go and look it up again to refresh my memory. There was, yeah, I think it's kind of like Mail is doing. When you move a message, it's actually copying the message and then deleting the original, but sometimes the copy doesn't work. It's kind of like what's happening, and it just does the delete operation instead. So it's like it's failed to do one of them, doesn't realize it's failed to do it, or something stupid like that. So it might be something subtle, like the copy doesn't always actually copy it, even though it looks like it has. So you're at risk of it losing the message anyway. You think it's copied it, but it hasn't actually copied it. And when it deletes the original, you're actually exposing the same bug again. So it's kind of like it's got a reference to it without actually having copied the message, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure. I'd have to go and double check that. So it'll take me a while to find it again.
It wouldn't work too well if you're trying to train your computer that something was not junk. I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's my main concern is junk mail, which is misclassified, is the most likely risk. Peter.
In my income mail, which is through
Gmail. In your case, yes.
It gives me the option of putting it into a folder or a drag, which is my airline tickets.
Yes.
If I put them into the Air New Zealand folder, when I come to look at it, the counter on my phone, it's not there. It didn't transfer it over. If I set up a division on my phone saying, would it be available?
I won't run mail on this machine because I don't trust it. I'll share screen here so Margaret can see. Okay, great. That'll do. Okay, so that's visible. You can see my mail. Yep, good. Okay, so in Mail, I've got a Gmail account floating around down here somewhere. There it is, Gmail. If you create a mailbox in Mail, there is a subtle rule about where it goes, which heading it's under. You'll notice you've got the list of standard mailboxes up top here, so you can see if that's visible enough. It's actually off the edge slightly. If I move that over a fraction. So we've got mailboxes. So that's got inbox, etc. Those are the sort of the standard ones. Then there's the smart mailboxes category, which I've got several of. Then there's an On My Mac heading. You can rearrange the order of these headings, so they may not be in that position for you. On My Mac is entirely private to your computer. If you put something inside an On My Mac folder, it's not available on the server and it's not available on any other device anymore because you've moved it onto your computer. You can also, with an iMac account, including Gmail, have folders that are actually on the server. So I've got an account with Zoho, and I have a whole series of folders that I've got on the Zoho server. I can access those from all my devices. So if I move a message to one of those folders, I can access them still from my iPhone, even though they're not in the inbox. Similarly, down here, I've got, so basically every account that I've got an iMac account for, including Gmail, has all these ones here. So if I wanted to put something in this WelMac folder, I can still access it on my phone by going to WelMac. So the question is, where did you create the folder? Or did you put it under the On My Mac heading, or did you put it under the Gmail account heading? If it's on my Mac, that would explain why you can't find it on the phone, because the message is no longer on Gmail. You moved it onto your computer. So all you have to do is instead create the folder under the Gmail heading. Yes, you should be able to. If you drag the whole folder there, what that will do is will copy the email back up to Gmail again and put it in a different place. So it will also show up in Gmail's case under the archive or my mail folder, because that has a list of everything that's there. Yeah. 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 Gmail is slightly weird because if you can actually, if you use a Gmail web interface, you can tag messages, and that actually is a concept that's not compatible with IMAP. So the only way to represent it is it actually copies the message into a different place. So, you know, multiple copies of the message in different folders and on the mail client. Yeah, well, that's not archived. That's Gmail's All My Mail, which does not exist in IMAP. Archive is a concept that's in IMAP, and Gmail's decided that archive is the same as All My Mail, so that's where they put them. So that's just the stupidity of the way that Gmail is handled on an IMAP client, because it can't do it any other way. It makes more sense if you actually use a Gmail specific mail client, which there is none on the computer, apart from the web interface. You can get a Gmail app on the phone rather than using Apple Mail, and that behaves like the web interface in terms of how it manages messages. So it makes a bit more sense if you use the web interface.
Did you put this Zoho in there, or did it go automatically?
I belong to it, so I've got accounts with a whole bunch of different services, and I've named those names that appear there are the same as the shortcut name I've used for each of the accounts. So I've got an account on Zoho, I've got an account on WelMac Zoho. Well, whatever you've called it, because the name is what I chose to call it, not necessarily the server. You may have just your email address as the account name, so it might be whatever at actrix.co.nz on top of it. Yeah, so have a look at the list of accounts, but the actual account name is this. That description field there is the one that actually controls it. So
okay, so that will then put in a set of
well, if you have multiple accounts and they're IMAP accounts, then you'll get a heading. If you're using POP, you don't get that feature because it's not a concept of POP. It's only a concept of IMAP. No, I have an Actrix account, but there is no heading for Actrix in here because Actrix doesn't. A POP does not support multiple mailboxes. It only has an inbox. That's the only thing that exists in POP. IMAP can have multiple account folders, including sent and trash and everything like that, which sync with the server. They will not appear on your computer yet because you're not running IMAP. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why with the Gmail account, if you want to add more mailbox to Gmail,
no, you don't. You can create it under the Gmail heading, which creates the corresponding tag on the Gmail interface. So it maps them back and forth.
So if I reverted to solely iPhone, it would be a nightmare.
Yes, probably.
Then I've got to think carefully about what I delete.
Well, if you delete, basically IMAP syncs everything. So if you delete a message on one device, it syncs with everything else, and therefore they get deleted everywhere. So the rule with IMAP is you don't delete stuff if you want to keep it. The rule with POP is you have to delete it on every single device. Otherwise, you end up with vast quantities of old emails. So this is the reason I stopped using POP. It drove me batty with my iPhone and iPad occupying vast amounts of storage with old emails. So I just gave up on it.
And especially emails you get coming into your account because you're belonging to so many bloody
mailing lists and things. Yeah. Yeah. So some of my stuff I've actually got most of my email going to Zoho, and I've got server-side rules auto-sort them into the different mailboxes so I can actually find them easily. So like all my mailing lists, the major mailing lists, I've got pre-sorted before I even see them. So it makes it easier. Okay, I think we've run out of stuff to talk about. Yep, and we need to pack up anyway.
Margaret's ready for bed as well.
Yep.
Well, my legs kind of are.
Yes.
The list kind of got really small. You're basically the only one left on now, Margaret.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of turning up, but to be honest, it was a bit of a red flag, the illness thing, because I was just going to say that a friend of mine's had exactly that same cold, and it just so happens I had my post-surgery appointment with my surgeon on Friday. So I don't want to jeopardize that. But also my legs get very tired in the evening.
Fair enough. As you seen from my behaviour tonight, is an occasional need to cough, but it hasn't been major. So and I can talk most of the evening, so that's good.
No,
Last week
you're
I can talk 5 minutes.
with you, if you get it, even if you're feeling quite well, if you've got a cold, they don't want you. So
No, I've had it 2 weeks ago really badly, and it's been sort of dwindling. It's sort of got to the point that's now just lingering annoyance.
one of the few that's still going around.
Yeah.
Independently of COVID. Yeah. Someday I'll ask you how you're backing up your Samsung, David. This is not a topic for tonight.
I've got no idea. I haven't even looked at that.
No,
it doesn't have anything important on
I
it.
would Google it and find out what the hell to do about it.
Yeah, but no, that's my work phone. It's got nothing important on it at all. If it all failed, I just get another one and set it up again. So
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. Yeah,
Mm.
because everything's on Gmail. Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, thanks a lot for that. Sorry you're not well. Or haven't been well.
mostly okay now. So yeah. Okay. Fairly well.